Hello, everybody. Right, so hopefully, fingers crossed, we were just talking about this before we came on, that we are live and everybody should see us. And if that does happen, it will be a miracle because it's the first time we've had it and it's been no problem. So we're going to keep quiet. Okay. Good evening. Welcome to UK Crime Book Club chat this evening. And I'm delighted to be joined by Ruth Irons, who has written this amazing debut novel, The Perfect Guest. But we will come on to that in a second because she really isn't. Hi, Ruth. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming on and talking about your book.
Thank you for inviting me.
So to start with, would you like to tell us in your own words about The Perfect Guest and sort of really and a bit about yourself?
Sure. Okay, so I have been writing, well, I used to write bits and pieces as a child, and then I stopped for years and sort of music took over my life and performing and acting and all sorts of things like that. And then before I had kids, so probably about 12 years ago, I started writing a middle grade fantasy novel. And I did a children's writing course and I decided I was going to try and get an agent. And so I did that, sending out to lots of agents and trying to get interest. And I didn't manage to get an agent. I hadn't realized how difficult that was. So I put that book to one side and I wrote a psychological thriller. And did another couple of writing courses and then tried to get an agent with that. And amazingly managed to get a brilliant agent, my agent, Joe Williamson. That book unfortunately didn't sell to a publishing house. So I wrote another psychological thriller, which also didn't sell to a publishing house. So I wrote this psychological thriller. And this is third time lucky on the psychological thriller front. Which I hadn't realized was quite so normal. You know, the first book you write isn't actually the first book that comes out. So that's my sort of writing journey. So yeah, we, after a bit of a false start there with the whole getting an agent thing, eventually we got an offer on The Perfect Guest, and it was very exciting because it happened almost immediately after it started to be sent out. And yeah, that's the story. I'll sort of, shall I move on to talking about the actual book?
Yeah. We can always come back to talk about that a bit in a bit more detail later if you like.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So the book is it's about Dinah, who is an interesting character. She's our protagonist, and we sit on her shoulder the whole way through. All the excruciating sometimes things that she do. She's an outsider. She goes on a luxurious weekend break with some old university friends, and all of her friends are very successful, and they have lovely jobs and lovely homes, and they have husbands and they have children, and she doesn't have any of those things, and she feels very left out. And as the weekend goes on, she starts to feel a bit well, she's always felt like a bit of an outsider, but she starts to feel like they don't particularly have much time for her. They're kind of putting her down a bit. She feels like an outsider. And what's also happening at the same time is she's becoming increasingly interested in the house that she's staying in, because it's a sort of Airbnb where the owners usually live there, but they happen to be away. So she's sort of looking at all their photos and looking at their bookshelves and getting a sense of who they are. And she realizes that she can perhaps stay an extra night in secret when her friends have left. So she waits for them to go. She waits for them to drive off, pretends that she's about to drive off herself. And then she lets herself back into this amazing house and spends an extra night there. And that is when her real obsession sort of takes hold, and she sort of becomes obsessed with this family, and that's when everything.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, sorry, you've frozen a little bit there.
Oh, you froze too, so I think we both did.
Okay. We didn't miss anything.
No. Yeah, no, I mean, she's I mean, I just the sort of anxiety that I had when I was reading of what she does as the book progresses, you know, from that very first, because it is, like you say, from the very first chapters, you realize that she's not part of their little clique, really. She's only been invited because somebody else couldn't come, and you sort of find out more about her as the book progresses. And she's, I sort of thought, I wrote down when I was writing down my sort of notes and things yesterday, that she, from the outset, she doesn't seem like she's a very happy and fulfilled woman. And you don't really know, you know, much about her to start with, but she obviously, she goes to Oxford, which is sort of something that she was really proud of, and that sort of, and these friends were from university, and that sort of changed as well. So it's quite interesting how the cat, because I was thinking, there was times where I felt really sorry for her, but times when I also like wanted to scream at her.
Yes, good. That's great.
Doing. Oh my God, sometimes it's just like, no, you cannot do that. No, you can't. No, and she does it.
I know, and it's really funny that you say that, because actually it was while I was because I subscribed to Writing Magazine, and it was whilst I was writing this book that I read a really interesting article in it about how you don't be afraid of making your characters uncomfortable, like put them in the awful situations. And it was whilst I'm so glad I read that article, because there were a few times where I was thinking about where I was going to go with it, and I thought, oh no, I can't do that, because that would really be awful. And then I thought, no, that's exactly why you should do it, because it really would be awful.
Yeah, it does. It's, I don't know, it's like at points you don't want to read on, because you know she's just going to do more and more silly, bad, whatever, you know, and she's going to end up in a mess, and you know that she's going to end up in a mess. And you want to sort of, she doesn't really, well, she does. I was thinking she doesn't really have people to guide her, but she does, but she doesn't take to that guidance, does she really?
No, she doesn't. No, she feels sort of patronized, I think, by people, and sort of, like she doesn't want to take that advice. She doesn't like being a mess. She knows she's a mess, but she doesn't like anyone sort of interfering. No,
I sort of, I was sort of interested in the inspiration of her, and the, what sort of, how did she come about, I think probably is the first thing, is as a character.
Okay, so I think that the first thing that came to me was I actually was staying in a really lovely Airbnb a couple of years ago with my family, and I was, and it was like similar. It was a lovely house. It had a swimming pool. I wasn't being stalky like Dinah. It was just that they had all the. I promise. But they had all the family photos up, and all, as you would if you rent out your place, you don't put every single thing away. And it just struck me as, it was just quite strange, because you know the children's bedrooms had their children's names on the door and little things like that, and it felt strange, because it felt like the type of atmosphere where you would normally be if you'd been invited into someone's home. It was that type of home where I felt like I should know who these children are, or I should know that photo on the wall. I feel like I should know who this person is, and I don't. And I'm staying in their house, and I'm sleeping in their bed, and it was just a sort of a strange thing. And so I thought, oh gosh, this is really someone. If someone was a really sort of stalky person, this put a seed of something in someone's head. And so I think that scenario came first, and then it got me thinking, what sort of person would do that? What sort of person would stay in? They'd have to have maybe something missing in their own lives. They'd have to, because everyone goes on lovely holidays and thinks, oh, I'd love to live here, this would be amazing. But you know, you don't do those extra steps, perhaps.
No, exactly.
But so I was trying to think, what kind of a person, and what would she do, and how would she go about it, and how would this obsession take hold, I guess. And and so then that's how it led on to everything else. And then it made me think, okay, so I kind of got the beginning. I imagine her going on this holiday and this kind of thing. But then I thought, there's got to be more to it than that. It can't just be that. Can't just be it. There has to be more intrigue from other directions. So that's where it sort of, that's how it came about.
Yeah, I was really intrigued in I've got a question that's sort of, I really love the setting, you know, that sort of girls trip away and the house. And I was thinking about sort of Airbnbs and how, I mean, you do hear some horror stories about them. My parents went on holiday not very long ago, and the second day they were there, they had the bailiffs turn up. And it was like,
oh my God,
yeah, someone, because it was a new flat, but it was for the person who'd owned it before. But it was
stressful.
Yeah, so I mean, but then you think about, you know, sort of if you've got someone who you're letting into your house, and you're leaving all your stuff there with social media, and I think that sort of appears in the book as well, doesn't it? How she finds out very easily who the people are, you know, their lives, about just really, really. And you think, God, actually, that's really scary how simple it is to find out who people are. And
yeah, I mean, anything like that, it's kind of, you just need a name. Anyone is sort of, you know, you can Google people so easily, especially if they've got a business that they're promoting, or they've got, you know, social media. It's easy to find people and and find out, you know, lots about them. So that was quite fun to work out how she was going to do that.
Because she's quite, I mean, yes, I mean, she's an intelligent woman, isn't she? She's, you know, she got accepted to Oxbridge, and she's clever, and things haven't gone the way in her life that she wanted them to do. And her friends have sort of moved on with their lives, and they've got children and partners, and she hasn't really. She's quite stuck in where she's been, hasn't she, really?
Yeah. She's sort of in a rut, but it's a rut that's kind of lasted 20 years or so. She's not, it's sort of, she's just not really got that impetus, I think. And obviously that you sort of find out as the story goes along, you know, I don't want to do spoilers or anything, but you find out sort of reasons why she might be sad, why she might be upset, why everything went wrong at university. And you sort of, you're sort of putting together this picture of this person that suddenly, this is the thing that gives her spring in her step, this idea of this shiny life with these perfect people. So she thinks she's walked into this a paradise where, you know, you've got your beautiful couple and a beautiful child, and they're happy and rich, and it's sort of about, I guess, envy and being careful what you wish for, and how things aren't always what they seem from the outside.
Because the thing I think I found the most interesting about her is although she makes really bad decisions, and she's quite emotional, isn't she? She's quite, when certain things happen, I won't go into too much detail, but when she's in certain situations, rather than being sort of dark and malevolent, she's sort of emotional and sort of surprised with herself that she's managed to do, you know, to be able to be part of these people's lives and things. It's quite an interest. I was quite fascinated with that sort of psychology behind it, really. It wasn't like something that I'd read before. It was I quite liked that because it was quite different.
Yeah, it's I think I was sort of because no one's black or white, and I
No.
really wanted to make sure that I had a character that was interesting, and that there were, you know, points where someone would feel sorry for her, but also be really angry with her, but also, you know, perhaps want to slap her or
Yeah.
shake her or just say stop. But yeah, but also that you might feel like, oh, you would, if you were with her, that you might want to put an arm around her and say, look, come on, let's have a cup of tea and calm down. But yeah, it's she is emotional, and she's quick to sort of react sometimes in an emotional way. She surprises herself, like you say, with her own emotions. She feels things coming up, and you don't know whether she's going to be able to. You're like, oh God, what's she going to do, sort of thing. So
Yeah.
I kind of wanted that sort of bubbling, uncertainty of where she was going, sort of to come across.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? Is it's like I was interested of like when you wrote her, did she surprise you when you sort of did you always know, did you always know that Dinah was going to be your, character, and how did she sort of change as you wrote?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I'm not a massive plotter. Was I'm not a massive. I'm not really a big plotter at all. I'm not a plotter. So
I am not a plotter.
I'm not a plotter. I'm not. I plot in my mind, and I make some notes, but I'm not a huge. I don't work out all my characters before I write them, because I find it hard to know about them until I've sort of workshopped them a bit, I suppose. I guess like with acting, you have to get it on its feet, the scene on its feet, and see what happens before you make decisions about it. So I'll happily rewrite a scene or a conversation if I think actually that person was being a bit more sarky than I think they should be, or that person's being, but I have to write something before I can make that decision as to what they're doing. So I can't just write a paragraph saying this person is going to be A, B, C, D, E, and they're going to have these traits, and they're going to. So I think that in a way, that first weekend with the girls was that sort of, I guess, a litmus test to how does she react? What is her underlying? So that was my kind of jumping off point. So no, I hadn't made decisions about exactly what she was going to be like when I first started writing. So that sort of evolved as it went along.
But she sort of, when you sort of started to write her, have you got a sort of a picture of what she's like in her head? I was trying to think actually whether I sort of could imagine her, and I could when she was, when she sort of she does her transformation, I think we can say.
Yes.
And she gets all sort of glammed up, and so I was quite interested in her sort of butterfly. She sort of comes out of a cocoon, doesn't she?
Yeah, she does. I just love things like that. I love that in books or films or TV. I love a little montage where someone's having a makeover and or anything.
And the roots done.
Yeah, exactly. In the hairdresser, and then putting the makeup on, and then doing, and the difference in the way they strut because they're now super confident. And so I sort of had that image in my head of her, of her becoming. I think she doesn't have maybe much confidence in herself, but I think I wanted her to be, she can clearly be a very charismatic and attractive person.
Yeah.
I think she feels like that in her normal sort of day-to-day life. So because of her psychological issues, I guess.
She's really brave, I think. There's no way. I mean, brave or stupid, I guess you could say.
Yes.
Because some of the things she does, she turns up at places that she's not invited to. She sort of gets herself into places that she's not supposed to be. She spends that extra night in the house, and that takes a certain amount of something. I'm not sure what it is, but bravery or bravado, I don't know what it is, but
Yeah.
that was the bit that sort of, I think, really shocked me with her, because I could never imagine doing that. And I think that's what made her so interesting. It's like taking you out, isn't it, of your comfort zone and thinking, God, actually, I would never do that in a million years, but she would.
No, absolutely, she would. And I think that's the thing. It's like, I would never do that, but I kind of want to see what happens when she does.
Yeah.
You sort of want to feel like, I kind of want to watch and see what the fallout is, even though I wouldn't do it myself, sort of thing.
Yeah. I think because the girls that she goes on holiday with, I'm not sure. I mean, I didn't think they were particularly nice to her, were they? They were all a bit patronizing, and she'd only been, but I guess, we don't know particularly, because we don't really know. We're sort of, I guess, having it from her perspective of what they're like. So
yeah, I think that maybe she's oversensitive in some ways, and maybe some of the comments they made could be taken two ways. She obviously took them to be super patronizing, whereas actually they were well meant. But because we kind of see it through her lens, I think she's so quick to say, oh, that patronizing way that Priya always says this or always says that, whereas actually maybe they are trying to, just bring her out of herself. And I think that Meg's, especially the friend at the beginning, there's one friend who she clearly gets on with more than the other two. And I think that she was probably the only reason why Dinny was invited. She's probably, it's her, she's the sort of contact, really. And the other two perhaps aren't that bothered about her. So, yeah, it is a bit sad. She doesn't really have any sort of close friends that she trusts.
Should we talk about Hen, her sister? Because she's an interesting.
Yeah, sure.
How did she sort of come about? Because she's the sort of the voice of. I mean, she doesn't know what's going on. Thank God, she'd have a fear if she did. Obviously, the very protective sister, looking out for her. She knows obviously what's gone on in the past, whereas we don't. We're not party to that to start with. We don't know what's happened in the past. But Hen, the sister, is always on the end of the phone. She works with somebody. Sorry, my brain has gone completely.
No, it's fine. She's linked to the cafe work. Work. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I think I needed someone to be. I guess sort of just keeping tabs on Dinny, and I wanted someone who was. I didn't want her to be completely isolated, because I think that's the thing with thrillers and crime writing, and they always say that you should try and isolate your protagonist, because otherwise it's unrealistic, because if someone is completely, they've got nowhere to go, but they have, because their friend lives 2 doors down and their mum and dad are only in the next town, and they've got a really supportive family network, and that's not going to work with a thriller, because otherwise everyone would be fine and no one would find themselves in these situations. So I was thinking, I need her to be this loner but I thought, if I give her a sister somewhere far away, like Aberdeen, which I think, let's put her in Aberdeen, and who's sort of always on the phone and always nitpicking, but isn't able to get there, and isn't so close that she can swoop in and take her away and say, don't worry, that type of thing. And also I thought, that would be quite good from a point of view of letting out what perhaps had happened in the past. Someone to talk with about back and what happened, that sort of thing, so that not everything was an internal monologue all the way through, that there was someone who knew that they could sort of.
I think the characters were, I think, you've got so many great characters in this book as well, because we've got the owners of the house, Isaac and Sarah, who are like the perfect couple, and then you've got Duncan, and I can't think of what her name is, but Angie. Oh,
Evangeline.
Evangeline, that's it. Yeah, Evangeline. Yeah, you have to be careful saying that one.
Yes. Yeah.
And she sort of becomes closer to Duncan and Vanjie to start with, doesn't she? Because of her sort of history at being at uni and being a tutor. That sort of is her persona, isn't it? Is this tutor and was that something that, so with the research of the book, did you sort of what did you research? Was there anything you sort of researched particularly when you were looking at it?
What did I research? I looked at a lot of Airbnbs online. That was fun.
The internet's so good, isn't it? Because I was last week when we had Alex Chowdhury on, we were talking about her book. She had a big house in it, and she did it. We were talking about how she said she spent most of her time on Rightmove.
Oh yes, I saw. Yes, I think I saw a bit. I saw that that interview. Yes, that's yeah, Rightmove. Yes, and also Pinterest. I love Pinterest. So I was on Pinterest quite a bit. I think I've still got some houses saved on Pinterest and on Rightmove that I've liked. That I think, oh yeah, that one's nice. It's got a copse of trees. Maybe it could look. So not that I've stolen one particular house, but just that you just get an idea. Like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, maybe one of those would be nice. Maybe a lake. Maybe let's have a lake. Maybe let's have that sort of thing. So that's quite fun to do. So I did that, and I so research wise, I didn't do a lot of so I'm a musician and I'm a music teacher. So I quite
right. So the tutoring,
that sort of the tutoring, it made me think, oh, that's quite good if she's got something that's separate to her cafe job that would be an in. So, and I thought actually her English degree, that would be really good, because usually, and the whole word of mouth, because usually that's how and not that I want to equate myself with Dinny at all, because I'm not like her at all. Think you probably would. But I word of mouth is just so huge with anything like that, anything that's sort of lessons or tutoring or things like that. So I thought actually that's quite a useful thing. That's quite a viable reason why they would ask her to come to their home on her own, if she was working one-to-one with their son on his GCSE English. I thought actually that's quite a good way. And actually, maybe I was thinking that could be another good thing, another wheel that's fallen off somewhere. She did do a bit of tutoring, but then something went a bit wrong with one of the families. We don't quite know what happened, but she had to stop. So that was another way I thought, oh, okay, maybe that would be a good way of building her up a bit. Yeah.
I think that's what I really liked about the book as a whole, was that it is, you from the outset, it's pretty fast paced, isn't it? It's, you're right in, from when they're on the trip, and then actually what happens, after the trip, sort of her getting into that lifestyle and where she wants to be, happens quite quickly for her, doesn't it? Quicker than she anticipates, I think. But did that sort of come naturally when you were writing it? You said you weren't a plotter, but was that something that sort of came with the first draft, or was it something that came with editing?
That's something that pretty much came with the first draft, because although I don't plot massively, I have sort of beats, I guess, that I want to hit, and I sort of, as I'm going along, I'll think, oh, that is a scene that needs to happen. So I'll make a note of scene in a members club, gate crashing a members club party. Yes, that would be great. Or I think shopping trip, Covent Garden. Yes, lake. There needs to be some sort of fallout, and that's what's going to happen. So I France. Things like that. I have these moments that I think I see sort of in my head, and I think yes, and that's a conversation that needs to happen next to a swimming pool, or that's a conversation that needs to happen in a dark club, or that. And so I sort of I see those sort of useful plot points, I guess,
Yeah.
and I write them down, and then I'll be writing chronologically, and I'll be thinking, oh, do you know what? The next chapter needs to be that one. And it might not be the first thing I've written down, but it's the jigsaw pieces are kind of there, and I slot them in the order that I think they work the
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
effectively. So, and I do write sort of like I read, really. I know they say we should write like a writer and then don't think about, but I think about readers all the time when I'm writing. I'm always thinking, what would a reader think reading this? What would a reader think?
Yeah.
Would a reader have guessed that if I write this, or would they? I'm always trying to think that. And so I think I like fast paced
Yeah.
books. I'm
Yeah.
not a massive fan of really slow, lingering
No, I like
plots.
to get on with it. Yeah.
Immediately hooked and then just be all the way through.
Yeah.
So if I'm writing, I can feel it when I'm writing. I'm thinking, you know, this conversation has gone on long enough. I have to, something dramatic needs to happen now. So that's kind of how I do it, sort of from what I would want to be reading sort of thing.
Yeah. I think, I mean, it's really interesting because I like fast paced as well. And I think, you know, I don't mind if a book gets, takes a little while to get going. But I love, I quite like a prologue, and that gives you a bit of a clue. And you mentioned something about giving clues, really, so that can they guess? Because it's about giving away enough, isn't it, so that the reader's got a chance, but they don't guess. And that was another thing I loved about this one, is I can't say too much about it, but there's so many things in this book I didn't guess, and it ended completely how I didn't expect it to end.
Good,
which
great.
was really good, because I really like that. But yeah, I was like, oh, okay, right, wow, yeah, where did that, but it wasn't like a whoa, I didn't see that coming. It was just a whoa, I didn't expect that.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad about that.
And I guess you really want that. I guess some people do want you to guess, but I think quite a lot of majority of crime writers, psychological thriller writers, don't want the reader to guess, or they want to.
I think you want people to feel like like you said before, like they have a chance, they could have worked it out. I think you need to feel like that, but not like you've been tricked. And I think there's sort of sometimes a fine line between a reader feeling like, oh, well played, and feeling oh, well, that was completely, I've just been hoodwinked. You have to be careful that you're not just
definitely.
Out it was this person that you've never met before. That's not,
you saw them on chapter 2 and they were opening the door.
Exactly. And now it turns out they masterminded everything. But I think that there has to be an element of, oh, I could have got that if I had seen all the clues were there, but I didn't quite see it. So that's what you try. And obviously it's not going to work with everyone. Nothing is going to work with everyone. It's all so subjective. So you just have to do it the best you can, that you think that, like I said before, like I think would work if I was reading it. What would I have guessed at what point? And and so I tried to make it like that, so that people wouldn't be guessing. But I think you have to. I read somewhere, I think this was Will Storr book that I read, saying about the psychology of storytelling, and I thought it was really interesting that people are the most invested in a story when they suspect that they know the answer, but they're not quite sure. So you have to not knowing nothing and being completely, oh, I'm just so confused, I don't know what's going on, is at one end, and being really certain that I know exactly what's going on here is at the other end. You have to kind of have people, because people like to be proved right, so people have to want to keep on reading to sort of go, oh, this is what I suspect, I need to see if I'm right. And so
I think sometimes I just don't see, like, I think I could sometimes, I think I sort of think I know who it is, or if it's like a whodunit, I'll think, oh yeah, I know who it is, and I'm very, very rarely right. And so some people will say, oh, this book was too predictable, or da, da, da. And I think, well, I didn't find it predictable. So I do wonder how
it's so subjective, isn't it? I'm saying with thrillers, when I read them, I very rarely get the twists, I would say, or get them completely right. You might sort of think, oh, it's going to be something around that, or otherwise she wouldn't have put that. You sort of have a vague idea, but I'm much better at guessing them on TV. I don't know whether that's a visual thing. I don't know what it is.
I'm not going to get that either.
I don't know why that is. That's so weird. I don't know. It's a processing thing, difference between reading it and watching it. I don't know, but it's, I don't know. It is interesting what people think, and sometimes as we go along. I had a friend who was reading it as I was writing it. I was sort of sending chapters along, and she'd send me her text, because I'd say, I want your thoughts as you go along. And so she'd text me going, okay, so I think this, and I think this, and I think this. And I'd just be thinking, that's amazing. None of those, that wouldn't have occurred to me. But then I'm thinking, that's so strange that she would have thought that maybe that could happen. Yeah. Really interesting to see other people's sort of, where
it is. And actually, I guess we only, as a reader, you only know your interpretation. Is it somebody else could read the same book and interpret it completely differently, and the characters interpret it completely differently. I mean, I think I find Dinny interesting as much as that I've read quite a lot of books where I've really despised certain characters, and you want them to get their just desserts. But I didn't feel like that with her. Did you intend?
Good. Yeah, no,
good. That was the right answer.
Yes, please, no, don't, because I've had a couple of people say that they really disliked Dinny, and that she was just this, this terrible person, and always felt quite protective of her. So I need to defend her a little bit.
Yeah,
obviously she makes bad decisions, but I didn't. I love seeing the different reactions to her. Like some people sort of, oh, poor thing, and some people thinking, oh gosh, no, I can't bear to watch. So I think that's good. I think it's a good mix. But I did want some people to feel like this, you're sort of spurring her on, although she's making bad decisions. You sort of don't want her to get caught.
No, you don't want her to get caught. No, and I think. I think I quite liked that, having the different emotions, because in the beginning I thought, I'm not going to like her.
Yeah.
But actually, I changed quite quickly of thinking about her and thinking, oh, actually, I mean, like I say, I couldn't imagine doing the things she did, but on the other side, I didn't find her really offensive in any way. I mean, I did really want to shake her from time to time.
Yeah.
And say, for God's sake, what are you doing? Stop it.
Yeah.
Just walk away from the door or wherever you're going.
Yeah. Just make a good decision. Yeah.
What was the biggest challenges you had of writing this book? Was there anything that really sort of you were stuck with, or you found it really difficult to bring together, or characters that any of the characters that you found harder to write?
Yes. So the most difficult thing was when I first set out, and like I was saying before, I knew that I wanted this setup with the holiday home and her going in and becoming obsessed, and then I quickly realized that couldn't be it. So I decided various other things would be the case, that perhaps this family unit weren't as solid as they look like they are in the photos. So I decided that, but actually Isaac, I guess, was an interesting character to write, because when I started out, and actually even at the point when I was writing the bit when Dinny met him, his character arc in my mind was completely different. So I won't. I can explain that to you separately, so there's no spoilers. But it's going to be the way that it is. when they first met, there was going to be a different ending completely. And so that was interesting when I sort of got those few chapters in and sort of
yeah, I can sort of see that. And I think that's what I mentioned.
Yeah, so I think that, yeah, once I'd sort of done a few scenes with them together, and I thought, oh, actually, this might be more interesting going in a different direction, rather than the one that perhaps you might, and then that in itself helped with some of the sort of twists and turns,
the tricky bits.
Yeah. So I think that's useful. That's useful to not be too. That's why I'm not a big fan of plotting. And it's not that I'm awfully disorganized or anything. It's because it's deliberate, I promise. It's because I think that it's actually quite useful sometimes to not have completely set in stone what you're going to do, because otherwise you're kind of looking at your sheet, at your spreadsheet, at your post-it notes all over your wall, and you're going, okay, this is what this person does next. Okay, this is what this person is like. You're following it, and what if, and if you've plastered your whole bedroom wall with this is what's going to happen, it's quite difficult then to go, no, that's not what's going to happen. Let's tear it all up. Whereas I think if you're not too wedded, then your brain perhaps has room to go in some different directions, maybe, and so you end up going, oh, that's.
I think that's interesting. And I think probably because you're a creative, aren't you, as well? Because you're artistic, because you're musical. Yes. I wonder whether that freedom to be able to change when you want to sort of is part of that, because some people are really wedded to the post-its and the plot. Yes. And I think it probably depends on how your brain, because I think there are so many different ways that you can write and but I think I like that the sort of creative way. I think you sound like it's much more of a creative process of, like, almost you're feeling your way through sort of.
Yeah, I definitely think it's like I think it's that I am feeling my way through, and just sort of going where it takes me and thinking what's going to be the most interesting thing to write at a certain point. And and then that can be interesting looking back, where if you've written a scene in one frame of mind, and then a few chapters later you change what you think of that person, it's quite interesting going back and reading that chapter again, because sometimes you think, actually, do you know what, I don't think I need to change anything, because I think it's perfect, because actually it reads in an interesting way. I wouldn't have written it like that if I'd planned this to be happening, but because I have, it's made it a bit more colorful, or it's made it a bit more, it's interesting. But obviously when you do write like this, you do end up having to go back and unpick stuff because you've decided something that's just not. I was making a note, as I go along, going, oh, I've changed this, but I need to go back and do a massive search for this person's name and change every mention of this. And so there's a fair bit of that because of the lack of foresight with the plot.
I think it's sort of, I mean, she's quite, you'd call her an unreliable narrator, wouldn't you, really? I like that flawed sort of unreliable narrator. I think it makes the book more interesting, because you don't know where it's going to go. You don't know where, you sort of think you know where it's going to go, but you don't know, because you don't know what they're going to do. And I think that's much more fun.
It's unpredictable, and I definitely think so. And I think it's interesting because she's like, a few people have called her an unreliable narrator, and I think it's interesting because I guess she is unreliable in that you wouldn't rely on her, and you can't really, you really wouldn't, and you can't trust the way she sees the world. But as far as she's concerned, she's not unreliable. She's not being deceptive.
That's true, isn't it?
It's not a Gone Girl, or it's not that you're reading and you're going, oh, she's completely fabricated. It's not a, do you know what I mean? It's interesting. It's sort of, she's unreliable in in a
Sort of a naive way, really.
way. She's true to herself, but
Yeah.
she's very honest about everything she's doing and feeling herself.
Yeah.
But it's not sort of she's just not the most truthful to other people. But you see, I think that's kind of why I wanted also to write it in first person, because you really are, you're not just talking about, oh gosh, this person who's making these interesting decisions. You're actually kind of, you are her, you're in her head.
I think that's why it's maybe
makes it slightly
uncomfortable, isn't it? Why it makes you uncomfortable, because you are really close to her. You really, it's not always a good place to be.
No, it's not a comfortable place to be. No.
But I mean, as an author, that must be really exciting for you for your character to be able to evoke those emotions in people for reading.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's so fun. She's so fun to write. I've not written a character like her before, and the previous couple of psychological thrillers that I wrote that haven't been published were more you're following the person, you're on the shoulder of the reasonable protagonist, and you're trying to work out what the unreasonable people are doing. So I think it's a lot of fun to be on the shoulder of the person who's the problem, who's making all the bad decisions. So
because you talked about, you said you weren't sure how. One of my questions was did you always know how it would end? And you sort of touched on that things changed. But did they change dramatically, or
yes, I would. Yeah, I definitely. I don't think that I think the ending that I had in my mind before was not as complex, perhaps, and also it was someone else. In the end, it was someone different, and it was completely different, and it's not the first time I've done this, and that I get to a point and think, oh no, I need to twist things an extra. There
are quite a lot of twists, actually. I think I like that, though. I like the twists.
Good. Yeah, I think that it's it's only when I sort of get deep into it that I think, oh no, what I've planned is not quite where I want it to go. So that, I guess, writing the first bit of the book is my planning. That is my way of planning. It was completely different in the end to how I imagined it at the beginning. Yeah.
Is that quite stressful when you sort of think, or is it more exciting because you sort of you can see a better way, I guess, in the end?
It's quite exciting. I usually get to a point where I'm quite deep in and I'm really liking it, and I have a tangle like that. I sometimes feel like it's a bit like I might sort of like combing knotted hair, where you everything's going along nice and straight, but all you're doing is you're pushing the tangle sort of further down.
Yeah.
And I get to that point where I think I can't go any further until I've done something at this point. So I go away from the computer for a couple of days and just think about it, and I'll think about it in the shower, or when I'm falling asleep, or when I'm taking the kids to school, or what, and I'll just be really, and it's sort of working out a little puzzle, like like you would if you were reading a book and trying to work out, oh, I wonder if it's this, or I wonder if it's that, and I kind of do that and think, how am I going to do this? And oh, maybe, and I'll get just a little strand of something and sort of pull on it, and then suddenly I'll think, oh yes, that's the way, and I sort of tease it out. Yeah. Quite like that stage, because it's quite exciting. It can be a bit panicky, like you say, at first, when you just realize, I need to change it. What am I going to do? I've written so many words and I need to change it. But actually, once you get that sort of eureka moment. That's really exciting. And then I can't wait to get back to my laptop. I'm just like, oh, I'm bursting to make these changes. Now I know where it's going to go. But it's definitely, there are writing days and there are thinking days. So
yeah, I guess you just can't keep sort of plugging. You need to have that headspace, don't you, to think, and quite often you get your best ideas when you're thinking about nothing.
That's so true. And I hear the advice all the time about how write every day. Make sure that you make yourself write every day. And I've not found that to be helpful personally myself, because I think that the thinking, okay, if you've just gone away from your laptop and you're not doing any writing and you're not for weeks and you're bad at it, that's different. But if you the thinking days are the writing days, because the ideas are as important as putting words on a page and a word.
Yeah.
So I think if you've got a few thinking days and you need that time, that's really important, because otherwise you're only going to have to unpick what you've written anyway. So that's what I find is really helpful.
What's the best thing been about being a published author? What's been your sort of highlight?
What's been the highlight? I just, ever since I got a phone call from my agent saying that my book was going to be published, I've just been, this grin has been on my face ever since. Just having people saying, so that was amazing. I was walking on cloud nine, knowing that a publisher, after all this time and all the books I'd written, actually wanted to publish my book, was amazing. And then to have now to see people of just reading it, people knowing my characters, it's just so lovely to speak, to speak to you, and you're talking about Dinny, and it's like we've got a friend in common, a very scary friend in common. It's like it's funny when people live in your head for so long, to have strangers talking about them with you and saying, oh, I was a bit worried when she did this or that, or people posting on social media about, oh, this was she really stressed me out when this happened, and it's just lovely. That is amazing. Seeing friends who I haven't spoken to for years, old friends saying, oh, I've just bought your book, and asking me how it's going, and I had my book launch on Saturday at my local bookshop. Just lovely people turning up, and it's just been so lovely. Everyone's been so encouraging, and when being a writer can be so lonely sometimes. It's just you and your ideas, and when you first start writing, and you're scared to show them to anyone because you're sure that they must just be awful. And so to go on that journey and to be, okay, I'm going to be brave and let someone read maybe a paragraph or something, to then, growing. It's just been amazing. Yeah.
Because I think, I think this, you've got the picture of the front cover of the pool, and it is a perfect holiday read. I think, you could definitely, it would definitely be one I would be taking. And I can definitely see it, I always, when I go around the pool, I always like to have a look at what everybody's reading. And I think if I was going to the airport, I would definitely sort of pick this up.
Definitely.
It's sort of, although she is a bit stressful from time to time, is Dinny?
Yes, a little bit stressful, but
it's a bit stressful, just a tad.
in a nice setting though, in beautiful places. So
I really like the publicity actually that your publishers did about come and stay at Riverdene, and
I love that. That was great. I saw that. That was brilliant.
And I was like, oh, it's a real place when I first saw it.
No, I was thinking that. I was like, gosh, that looks lovely. I'd definitely go and stay there. But I know it's lovely. And my and one of the publicity teams told me that they were also, to booksellers, they were sending out little cocktail cards, because there are so many cocktails in the book. Little sort of cocktail recipe cards, as publicity as well, to bloggers and things. And I just thought, oh, that's a lovely idea. So it's been amazing having a team of people, thinking of brilliant things like that. So it's been so
really exciting. Yeah. And have you seen it in the shops? Have you sort of?
I have. So I've got I went to my local Waterstones in Kingston, and they had a couple of coffees, and I just went to introduce myself, and I took my coffee and said, "Oh, it's publication day, and I just wanted to say that this is me." And they were really lovely, and they brought out a couple of copies, and I signed them, and they put the little sticker on,
nice.
thing, signed by the author. It was lovely. And I've had some friends in various places taking photos when they've seen it in shops. So that's been amazing too. So yeah, it's all been a bit of a whirlwind. It's been brilliant.
Yeah, so are you doing have you got any more events sort of lined up for the book?
I'm going to Harrogate Crime Writers Festival. I don't have any events that I'm doing there, but I was absolutely, every year I see everyone going, and I'm so jealous. So this year I'm definitely going to go. I've never been before. So
I've never been.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Have you? You should definitely.
Everyone. Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to go one year.
Yeah, so I just thought this year I'm going to go, and I've got a load of stuff that my publisher. I'm hopefully doing something in a bookshop in Surbiton, maybe in July. A panel that's about to be sort of rescheduled. So yeah, I've got a couple of things like that are just
that's exciting,
just brilliant, really fun things to do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We're just coming up to the hour, which it's so flown by. Before we go, do you have a favorite author, or are you do you read quite broadly, or is there anything you've read recently you'd recommend?
Oh, I love the first person I'm going to say is Lisa Jewell. I absolutely adore Lisa Jewell. She's the queen of the thriller as far as I'm concerned. So I've read most of her books and listened on Audible as well. So she's one of my favorites. I just read Louise Candlish, Our House. I'd not read it before.
Oh, I read that. That's so good. So
amazing.
Scary.
It's really scary. Again, it's that whole property thing, like people in your space, in your home. And so, and I'd seen it. It's one of those covers I'd seen for years, and hadn't got round to reading. So I was like, I have to read it. I absolutely loved that. I recently read Yellow Face, which I also adored.
Oh, I've got that to take on holiday with me. So
it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. So that's another one that I recently read. I just finished Strange Sally Diamond.
Oh, that's good as well. Read that. That's really, really good.
Yeah, fantastic. So there's all these ones. I mean, there's just so much, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. There is so many books to read and so little time.
I know. I try to have one going on Audible whilst I'm not at the same time, but I've got one for when I'm walking around and one for when I'm in bed at night. But it's hard to keep up. But yeah, so those are some of my favorites that I've read recently. So
now I've just gone back to audiobooks because I used to drive an hour to work and back every day, and I listened to audiobooks quite a lot then. And then I changed jobs and moved closer to home, so I only do half an hour. But I've realised that actually you can still listen to a book in a week for half an hour each way, and then maybe a bit of lunchtime. So then I'm squashing another one in. So I've just they're so good. I do love them. I do love being read to. I've just finished reading The Midnight Feast by Lucy Foley, and that's amazing.
That looks amazing.
So good.
I just read a few months ago. I read The Paris Apartment. So
I've got that one here to read.
The Hunting Party is my favourite of hers so far. But I do definitely need to read that one.
It's very good. It's very sort of folk. I would call it like folk horror.
Okay.
She writes some despicable characters.
She does, doesn't she? Yeah, she really does. Yeah, she's very good at that.
She is, yeah. And this one is no exception. That's all I'm going to say. Well, thank you, Ruth, for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good team.
Sorry, we're having a bit of a lag again now. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's been great.
No, that's fine. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Thanks to everybody for joining us, and we'll see you all again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.